I apologize for running late today. I had I had technical errors. I don't know exactly what happened, but I got it figured out and I'm here. We're going to talk about the biggest reasons why we can't leave. I in the last part of that relationship when I was trying to leave, I was felt so humiliated, so deeply ashamed. I knew that I should leave. I knew that this relationship was terribly bad, and yet I just found it nearly impossible to exit the relationship. And I know I'm not alone. I know a lot of you have sit in this spot and have wondered what's wrong with you. Maybe you have questioned if you're struggling with mental illness. Maybe you're even wondering what the purpose of life is. I know that I got that dark, that I started to wonder, I started to feel like it wasn't worth being around, that it was better if I just, the way out was just not to be here instead of being in this relationship. I don't think, I'm one of these people that it take a lot to defeat me. I may not come out like a fighter in an argument, but when it comes to being determined and strong-willed, like I'll show you. I mean, you set a goal out there that you think that I can't pass, and you point it out to me that it's too hard, and I'm going to show you that it's not. I would be one of these people in an endurance race. Now, I don't have the build for it, but I have the personality that if I was running an endurance race, I would cross that 150-mile mark, you know? So when I was in this relationship, to get to that place where I just felt like giving up was shocking to me. I had never, I mean, I did overcome a whole lot in my life, but this relationship took me to a super dark place. So I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about the biggest reasons you can't leave, why you're struggling to leave, what this is about, what maybe you can do about it. I want to give you an insight look at the dynamics about it so that you understand what you're going through, so that you have more tools. So if this describes you, you know what to do and what to do next. Because I didn't. I mean, I did some smart moves that really helped me, but I want to share what those are with you so that you have them, so that you feel as equipped as maybe I was able to just sort of stumble along. I don't want you to stumble along like I did. I want you to do better than that. I want you to understand what's happening. So let's pull the lens back first to understand what exactly happens, because I think there's so much misinformation, and we really make some assumptions. There's almost some prejudices about victimization and about predator behavior. There's an assumption that all of us have completely free will and that we are able to make all the possible any possible choice that's in front of us, that every choice is an equal opportunity, and that we have equal resources to make those choices. Now, anybody who's been in any marginalized or less than ideal situation already knows that's not true, that there are, some of us have way more opportunities, way more access. We even assumed better things about us. I mean, they did studies, for example, on classroom behavior and noticed that certain, like for example, boys tend to be called on more than girls. So, and if you're in a minority, that even gets worse. You're called on less than girls. So there's natural assumptions that we make about people. And when you're in a victimized position, whether you're there's biases. If you're a man who's with an abusive woman, and there are biases that women face when you're in abuse with abusive men, and I also think there's biases if you're in a like an LGBTQ plus community. There's biases that we have about those communities as well. And one of the first biases that we all assume start out with is that everybody has an equal chance and has equal opportunities, and we don't. What happens on top of it is that narcissistic and other toxic personalities, and I'm not even saying you have to be a narcissistic personality disorder. I'm just saying you have to be rather unhealthy, pretty dysfunctional, manipulative, exploitive. If you're leaning into that direction, then you go into this relationship from a standpoint of every man for himself. And people who have more of a cooperative view of the world, more of a reciprocal, kind of mutually beneficial view of the world, we don't assume that. We assume when we go into the world that we're everyone's for the relationship, that we're moving for the best interest of us as a couple, as a family. And so when you have somebody who already is breaking the frame, who's approaching it from the standpoint of every man for himself, then you're already at a disadvantage because that person's going to be making decisions that don't benefit you and don't benefit the relationship. Now, what benefits them, though, is making them think that you're doing it on their behalf, that you're invested. So that's where victims, the first hang up victims hit, is that we don't realize that we actually have a very egocentric, very selfish person who's also predatory and being exploitive because they present like they're not. They present like that you're the best person they've ever met. They've never felt like this before. They have somehow, and this is the part I know is really mysterious. If you're not wired this way, it just doesn't make sense. But you've seen it. If you've gone through one of these relationships, you see it, so you know it's true. But somehow, people who have this kind of mindset, think of the apex predators out there. You think of the lone wolf or the snake on a hunt. Think of even like a one of those jaguars or one of those animals. Oh, thank you so much for the gift. Who really knows how to hunt? They know how to entice and lure. They know how to even be in the environment and stay hidden. And so they have this almost like this intuitive extra antenna that picks up nuances about their prey, about who they're hunting. So they have learned really early on how to detect. Oh, thank you guys so much. They've detected really early on how to what your vulnerable spots are, what motivates you, what leverages you, what your fears are, what you desire, what keeps you awake at night. They've sussed that out sometimes within minutes, sometimes with even stepping into the room. They can look across the room and just peg you, unfortunately. Not always, but it doesn't take a whole lot to listen. And they have these, like I said, this highly attuned ability. It's not attunement, because attunement means you're sensitive to and you know how to really show up for somebody. This is not like empathic attunement, but it's rather an ability to be attuned, like aware of, and very, yeah, very sensitive. So there is probably better than me, honestly. I mean, I spent most of my life as a therapist, as a psychologist, and I bet you when it comes to spotting motivations and blind spots and weaknesses, I bet you they're as good as me, if not better than me. Mine pegged me really fast. So when you practice, and that's what they're doing. They're practicing, and you think about the number of people they've had to practice on. I mean, we're talking lots and lots of people, but this is really this is going to be super super unconscious. Hey Jess, I see you keep saying they're going to lose their subscription benefits. I'm not for sure why you keep commenting that on this and what that has to do with my TikTok live today. So if you have a question about the live, let's keep it to what's happening here instead of just going off on about subscription benefits, which don't apply to everybody. So thank you for that, though. All right, I'm so glad you're here, Inez. I want to first of all stop and just take a moment for all of you who are new to this channel, who are new to me, who maybe you've never seen me before. I'm so thrilled that you're here. So thrilled that you found this channel. I see Riki's new for the first time. Inez is new. Obi, I've never seen you before. I'm Sally and Lil. I've never seen you as well before. I'm so thrilled you guys are here and hanging out with me. I also have, I'm very thrilled on TikTok that you're here hanging out with me, and I love my moderators. I know Kim usually moderates for me, and I deeply, deeply appreciate all the hard work she does that. And then also over on Facebook, I'm so thrilled that you guys, I see Maria, my standby, faithful Maria. I just so deeply appreciate you. I'm trying to see the rest of the comments. Oh, and Dara from Switzerland. I'm so glad you're hanging out with me as well. So we're talking about today why the biggest reason is you can't leave. And so I wanted to first start out by saying that it is not an equitable relationship. You have been at a disadvantage from the moment you met this person, and that our society and culture assumes that there is not a disadvantage. We assume that there is this equitable access to resources and information and even power. We assume there's equitable power, so that you get into this situation and everybody around you thinks, well, because you got into it freely, you should be able to get out of it freely. But what they don't realize is that this person has psychological tools against you to manipulate you into a very one down position, and essentially has put you in terrible binds and basically psychologically has straitjacketed you. That's what they've done. They've stripped you of your power, stripped you of your voice. And how they do it, and I know that most people, this is another thing that bugs me. It really bugs me when we do this to victims. We often say to victims, you shouldn't care so much. You should not be so invested in this relationship. If you had more independence, and if you weren't quite so psychologically needy, we'll even use that word. We'll use really loaded words that are harmful. If you weren't so psychologically needy, then you could have just walked away. Well, here's the thing. And I was reading up on this from Patrick Carnes today in his book called Betrayal Bond, which I highly recommend. Hi, Bright Page from Michigan, and Elizabeth from California. I highly recommend Patrick Carnes' book, called Betrayal Bonds. He was the first, by the way, to talk about trauma bonds. I don't know if you guys know that. He was the original person who theorized about betrayal bonds. And he said, and this is true, psychologically, I know this is true, but I want you to think about it for a moment. Imagine for a second that those you dearly love, the people you've let in your inner circle that you consider confidants, who know you better than anybody, I want you to a moment for imagine that they reject you. Not only do they reject you from some whatever thing that they say about you, I want you to imagine they say they don't want a relationship or see you ever again. They don't like you, they don't want you, they don't need you, and they don't want to ever see you again. I want you to, for a moment, imagine what that feels like. Horrible. Horrible. In fact, I bet you're already starting, if you can imagine it, which I think a lot of us struggle to even put ourselves in that position, but if you can imagine it, I bet you also simultaneously feel deep shame. Like, what's wrong with me? Why did you suddenly decide this? How could you do this to me? It awakens such a profound experience of not only of being alone. Yes, a lot of us have, it's one of our great fears is being alone, but being abandoned is not just being alone. Being abandoned is being rejected, which accompanies it intense shame. And they use that. That's the first mechanism that they use against you. They let you know pretty early on by that hot and cold behavior. They show up and disappear. They over the top surprise you and make you feel like the most special in the world, and then suddenly they act like they have forgotten you, that you're a nobody. I mean, all this hot and coldness that you experience, it makes you feel like you're on a high wire, that you're a high wire walker. You're walking a high wire, and you're not on stable ground, and it's sloppy and shaky, and that you're going to go off any second. You feel precarious, dangerously precarious. And as a result of that fear of abandonment, like, I love this person. I want this person more than I've ever wanted to be in a relationship with anybody. I want this person to want me back. I want this person to want me to make a life with me forever. And when you suddenly feel like that's not for sure, that you know you're in like that, but you're not for sure if they're in like that, and they kind of dangle you over the possibility that if you make one wrong step, or don't keep to be pleasing them, or that somehow that you're not quite showing up right, what it does is it creates an intense fear that increases the attachment. That's what's so shocking about it. It increases the attachment. It doesn't make you feel like, oh, fine, I don't need you, I'm out of here. You don't feel that. You feel like you work harder. You're like, what's wrong with me? I need to overcome that. So I'm gonna work harder and make sure that I don't lose this relationship because I have invested so much in myself and I really love this person. I want us to work. So you step it up. And see, that's on purpose. All of that, whether they consciously or unconsciously know it, it's on purpose because it's the way in which they keep you attached. Now, here's the ironic part that we often don't understand. As much as they don't care about you particularly, because they actually don't really see you for you, you're not really a whole person to them. They don't appreciate that you have dreams and fears and needs. They don't see that. They just see you as a mechanism to get what they want. But people who are like this, who are very more primitively psychologically wired, are deeply needy people, deeply insecure people who depend on relationships, on supply from relationships to keep them held up, to keep them feeling centered in the world. So they're leaning into you for this, but it's not you per se. It's not like Keystone or Abby or Bright Paige or Arlene or Gail or it's not one of Kate. It's not you. It's somebody. They need a warm body. Unfortunately, it's a warm body, and any warm body really actually works. I was shocked about that. That's not how I feel about people. I'm actually pretty discriminate about who I find interesting and who I'm willing to take a risk on. And even who I have as close friends, I'm pretty, careful about that, who I let close to me. So if you're close to me, it's because I've chosen to have a relationship with you because you're not a warm body. You are somebody important to me. And I have built trust with you. I have feelings about you. I don't just simply, plug and play, but that's what they're like. They actually like plug and play. Like, so if they lose you, oh, well, there's thousands of others that would line up right behind you. And unfortunately, because of their charisma, their charm, their dynamic personality, their excessive confidence, we find them super attractive. They've actually done studies that psychologically, and they've found that we are really drawn to people who have this exaggerated kind of almost forward personality. Now, that doesn't make them good partners, doesn't make them really good at relationships, but we get attracted to them. Something about them is magnetic. I know I find, in fact, one of my warning signs is that when I meet a super magnetic person or super charismatic person, like, whoa, be careful. Need to know whether or not this is just a coincidence, this person just happens to have this, or whether or not this is actually a sign that I'm meeting somebody who has some toxic skills. So be warned about that. That is one of the things you should be watching out for. Yeah, Dara, this video is being taped. And so as soon as it's done, it will stay permanently on the Facebook page so you can rewatch it. So we're talking about why people can't leave. And I wanted to start about the dynamics of this relationship. So that's the dynamics, is that it's a one-sided relationship when it comes to power, when it comes to equity, when it comes to investment. And I read once from Dr. David Snarf out of the book called The Passionate Marriage. He said the person who wants the relationship the most has the least amount of power. So when you're more, then that's what they did. They have built a relationship with you that is basically inequitable, on purpose, inequitable. They have approached it from, what can I get from this? I do not need this person. This person's a nobody to me. Anybody could, that's a plug and play kind of mentality. And yet they want you to need them so that they maintain control and that the relationship's on their basis. And as a result of it, you end up in the one down position of wanting the relationship more than they do, which means you have the less power. Then they start to ramp it up with other things. They add criticism, which often, again, people assume, well, if he's a critical person or she's a critical person, why did you stay? And that's because, well, it wasn't done initially maliciously, or at least not to you. It was done to help you. It was like, I know you really are good about this, and I want you to even be better. Have you ever noticed that maybe if you did it this way, it might work better? So you end up thinking, oh, well, that's interesting. Or they may say, I just really want what's best for you. So I've noticed this. Have you ever thought of doing it that way? And at first you end up thinking, oh, yeah, that's really sweet. They want something good for me. You don't realize that this is actually to erode your self-confidence, to introduce self-doubt, to make you feel that you're not all. And anytime, watch out for this too. This is something we don't monitor, but we really should. Anytime somebody praises you, like, well done on that. Why are they praising you? Are they your teacher? They your parent? Did you ask them to be a coach or a mentor? If there's somebody who's just on equal par, like a friend or a partner or a coworker, that they haven't earned that right to praise you. Praise you suggests they know more than you. It's a one-up position. But so is criticism. Praise and criticism are the same. They're two sides of the same coin, and that is, it's assessing and judging you. Essentially, it's judging you. So when they judge you for doing well, that's still judgment. When they judge you for doing poor, that's still judgment. But all of that is done to make you feel like you're under evaluation, which makes you feel, again, precarious. And that's not a good thing. When we start to feel like people are measuring us, that we're being evaluated, that doesn't create a sense of safety. So be really, really careful about people who say, good job on that. What? Why are you saying that to me? Or, hey, way to go. Well done for you. I'm so proud of you. Especially that. So I'm so proud. Really? Why are you proud of me? I'm a friend. Why are you proud of me? I didn't ask for your evaluation. I'm capable of doing it myself. Unless we invited them into that role, they don't have a right to do that. So be careful of that boundary breach. It's a real subtle one, and it happens pretty commonly. But this relationship has been built on from the start, from the moment they met you, they groomed you and met you to make it inequitable. That was the point of it. They hold the power because they're plug and play, because they don't invest, because they have a mindset of that this is only for me and I'm in it for what I can get, not in it for the relationship, not in it for my partner. And on top of it, they're purposefully doing things that are very exploitive and manipulative that keeps you insecure and off balance. So all of that's happening. And then on top of it, you want to add in the coup de grace that really like tops it all off is they then betray you. They betray you. They'll do something that that hurts you. Talk behind. By the way, did you guys know the smear campaign started way before you ever started moving towards a separation or splitting? The smear campaign actually started when you met. It already started when you met. You were being betrayed by that person from the get-go. They talked about you behind your back as if you were like an ant. They didn't value your privacy. They didn't value your secrets. You had never had any kind of respect from this individual. And so they were already setting the stage for the split. So when the split happened, they had the story running so that when you then go out and say what you did, the person who hears it like, yeah, I've heard that a long time ago. I knew that you would complain like that because I've been warned that that's what you were like, that you were petty like that. So be really careful about, we're always like, oh, what did they do? How did they get the smear campaign? Oh, honey, that was already in place by the time you met them. I found out when it was all said and done that my ex, everybody was in on it with my ex. Everybody knew. Everybody knew that he had it. It was a con. They all knew. In fact, it made me wonder when I met his sister, she bent close to me and she whispered, I really love you. I appreciate you. And I'm thinking, why are you doing it like a secret between us? Why are you whispering in my ear? And why are you using the word love in Spanish that means like an intimate, deeply powerful feeling? Well, I found out later because she knew. She knew he had just had another girlfriend that they introduced a few weeks earlier before they introduced me. They knew that he wasn't faithful. He'd never been faithful. They knew he was a cheater. And they also knew that he was getting whatever he could out of me, taking advantage of me. And she probably felt some sympathy. Now, when it goes to who's going to side with whom, there's no way that anybody in that family is going to side with me. But see, they're already in on it. The smear campaign had already started. And I hadn't even showed up. The smear campaign had already started. So be really careful. Don't assume there's any kind of loyalty to you, any kind of respect for you, any kind of shown of like boundaries around you, around who you are and what you do and why you do what you are. There's none of that. So the betrayal has already started. You just haven't seen the big betrayal. You didn't know all these small betrayals were happening, that this person was actually essentially telling your secrets on you, that there was nothing secret about this relationship, nothing private. But then you have this massive betrayal. And I know for each of us it's something different. But when that betrayal happens, that is so devastating. I felt like somebody had taken a carving knife to my stomach. Seriously. I felt dead for a while. I literally walked around dead. I knew something had been permanently destroyed by his betrayals. But in fact, for the first one, I know, again, we don't talk about this enough. We all act like, well, everybody has somebody do something terrible. Everybody betrays everybody. No, I mean, not everybody does betray, and not everybody has been betrayed like this, but I'll tell you that when I discovered it, I found it was not unspeakable. It felt unspeakable. And I also knew saying it out loud would polarize people. That people would like go on one side or the other, and then I'd feel forced to have to make a decision, and that by me making no decision would put me into some decision that I may not agree to. So I just said nothing, because what do I say? I condemn myself by saying anything. So it's polarizing. I felt isolated. I felt mute. And I felt like something essential that was sacred. Because here's the thing, again, I keep saying this a lot. I always like, this is the most biggest thing, or don't remember. I know, I always talk in extremes. Forgive me for that. But I didn't appreciate the sacredness of intimacy, the sacredness of intimacy. That when we go into a relationship with somebody in a deep level and you're committing who you are and to share who you are and share resources and you're making these promises, there is a deep intimacy that's sacred. And when someone steps out of that, it's gone. It's like forever gone. They can do a lot of hard work to repair the trust and repair the way in which they harmed you or damaged you. But that initial sacredness is never coming back, because now you know they've let someone else in on that space that once belonged to just the two of you, that it's now been trampled on. I actually had a dream. I had a dream that it was like he was having a party and my wedding dress was on the floor and they were like walking on my wedding dress and kicking it around. And that by the end of that party he was having on my wedding dress, which in a way it felt like my dead body, that it would have been torn into pieces and cast into some corner. That's never coming back. So imagine all that I've said. You're in a relationship with somebody that's just a plug and play. You have somebody who's not in it for you, who's not loyal to you, does not respect you, somebody who already is betraying you at the most basic levels, like talking about you behind your back, not keeping what's private, that's just between the two of you. Here's an example. I told my ex, who had never heard this word before, that our intimate times that we often chatted together when we had those really cozy moments was like what I called pillow talk. That's what I called it. I called it pillow talk. He thought that was a great word. I found out later that he shared with the girlfriend he was seeing at the time that I didn't know he was cheating on me, that he and her were now having pillow talk. Yeah, I mean, that was crushing. Something that was private, that shared between two people, he now had shared with somebody else and referred to it in the same way. There was nothing sacred about my relationship with him. Nothing. So when you discover that also now that they've been criticizing you, gaslighting you, and all of this has been working up, and then this massive betrayal, you feel so traumatized, so paralyzed. And now nothing is safe about this relationship. Now you realize that you can't trust them with anything, that this is a really dangerous person, and you feel like you're on eggshells at this point. And yet you deeply they have created this incredible attachment, this bond that's based on fear, not based on love. Have you ever compared the difference between what it feels like to be afraid in a relationship versus what it feels like to love in a relationship? Here's some things that are different. In a loving relationship, there is support. In a relationship that's based on fear, there's insecurity and distrust. In a loving relationship, there's open communication. In a fear-based relationship, there is suppressed. You feel like you can't say what's on your mind. It's suppressed, or there's a lot of deception. There is, in a loving relationship, there is this, you feel built up, you feel validated, you feel more. And in a fear-based relationship, you feel like you have to hide and you can't be yourself. In a loving relationship, your boundaries are respected. In a fear-based relationship, your boundaries are breached. But we often don't recognize that we are in these fear-based relationships, that the whole thing from the start has been winding up, making us increasingly on edge and distrustful. So suddenly you have this massive betrayal, and this is what I'm leading up to. This is why you can't leave. You have this massive betrayal, and because you're being fed both good information and bad information, you get the loving stuff, and then you get this horrible, shocking stuff that doesn't line up. You see the Dr. Jekyll, and then then Mr. Hyde comes out, and you can't tell what's true, and as a result, you don't know what's real. And your first thing that happens to you is you ask yourself, who is this person? I don't know who I married. I think I married a stranger. I remember that point. I remember when I literally had this I just found out it was the last night on my honeymoon, which, by the way, I've heard that's super common, that these people wait until there's this big moment, like you've moved across the country, or you've announced you're having a baby, or you move in together, or you hand each other your first home purchase keys, or you're on the honeymoon, and then suddenly you're like, what? Somebody shared that they went to the honeymoon and their partner disappeared. She basically spent the honeymoon alone. He was out doing other things and left her back wherever. Mine, I woke up on the last night of my honeymoon from a letter from another woman saying, hey, I've been dating him the last 3 months, 2 months, which we are married. But I've heard that lots of you end up finding this like devastating information on these critical moments. It's like almost like they've passed over the threshold, and instead of carrying the bride over the threshold, they carry their ego, they carry the facade over their persona over the threshold, and now they're over, like they dropped it, like, whew, okay, now I can let go of that deception. I can show a little bit of my real self. That's what it often feels like. So you make this massive discovery. It usually takes a massive discovery. You haven't noticed the criticism. You haven't noticed the gaslighting. You haven't noticed that they're not as loyal to you, that you're no longer like comfortable anymore around them. Usually it takes this big like aha. And then once we have it, you think, whoo, who did I marry? I don't know who I married. And that's the first stage of cognitive dissonance. So what cognitive dissonance is, it's literally what it sounds like. It's cognitive, which means it's thinking. It's a mental exercise or mental practice. And the dissonance means that there are two discrepancies, two things that don't go together. So for example, today, if you're trying to kind of be healthy and make good choices around food, and somebody brought in something super sweet, maybe they left over brownies from their kids' party last week or over the weekend, or maybe somebody had a big, something big happen and they brought in donuts for everybody, but you suddenly were faced with a choice. And you thought, oh, okay, do I stay close to my healthy practices and eating clean, or do I indulge and have this whatever treat this is? That's dissonance. What you experience in that, like, what do? I don't know what to do. That's the dissonance. That's called cognitive dissonance. But when we're in these toxic relationships, we experience it as well. And this cognitive dissonance is you see a good person that seems to love you and says they love you, and then you're also living with this person who does all of this like bad stuff and hurtful stuff. And so you end up thinking, who are they? I don't know who they are. Do they really love me like they say? Are they working on this relationship? Are they invested? Are they really not? You get this mixed message, and because it's a mixed message, your brain literally says, I don't know which is real. They both feel real. And because they both feel real, I can't make a decision. And here's another reason that you can't make a decision. Not only that, but you made a decision to choose this person and you thought it was a good decision. And now you're finding out this person's not good and not who you thought they were. So basically you betrayed yourself in that decision-making process. And then you end up thinking, I'm now going to make another decision when not just found out I didn't make a first good decision. How do I make another decision on top of, I don't trust myself anymore. So I can't tell what's real, and I can't trust myself. So I don't know. So I thought, this is how I felt in the middle of that. I felt like making no decision was making a non-decision. It's like I thought I was standing on top of the fence. You know how there's one side of the fence is I leave, and the other side of the fence is I stay. But I thought as long as I didn't decide to leave or stay, I made no decision. I felt like I was literally on top of the fence. But you know what? That's not true. You're not on top of a fence. To make no decision is to make a decision to stay. So if you've not decided, if you feel like I've not decided, you actually have decided. You've decided that you're staying right now. You've decided. It's just to stay. There is no decision. But that's what I thought. I thought I wasn't making a decision. I thought I was like weighing my options, pros and cons, and I was going to finally make up my mind, and then I'd take action. I didn't realize that my lack of action was action. So really be careful about that. I think a lot of us get caught up in that, and we lose a lot of time thinking that we have time, and we don't realize that we've made a decision by not making a decision. So the second stage of cognitive dissonance. So the first is, oh my goodness, I don't know who this person is. And the second one is this relationship worth saving? Are we really working on something? Is it salvageable? Is it good? I don't know if it's a good relationship or a bad relationship. And in that stage, you end up feeling like, oh, I need to make it, what's wrong? I know I don't really, this person's not who I thought they were. And I see all these bad signs, and I can't tell if it's a good thing or a bad thing. How mine threw me off, and I'd love to hear how you guys threw you off. Mine told me, I've never worked so hard. I've never wanted this more, and I'm going to therapy. I know I have a problem. I know I have a problem with cheating. I know I have problems with sex. I just will work on it, and then hopefully, and I'm going to have slips, because if it's an addiction, there's relapses, right? Which don't buy that crap. That's not true. You don't need to relapse. That's a piss poor response. It's anyway. I should not have really allowed that any of this. But you end up feeling shocked that you don't know if the relationship is savable. In fact, one of you early on, I don't know if you're still here, you asked, can narcissists change? The unfortunate answer is they actually can't. Oh, thank you so much, Kim, for becoming a member. I need to update those what you get. I want to make sure that you get what you should be getting. So I want to make sure you get my newsletter that comes every week. I also want to make sure you get a free copy of my book. But thank you so much for becoming a super survivor today on YouTube. I really appreciate that. But we get into these binds that we really end up thinking that I don't, I'm not for sure. This person says all the right things, but yet the actions don't really line up. I mean, I'm not seeing consistency. And then there's so much edginess. This person's very like harmful and hurtful to me. And then they'll be super sweet to me, but it's really more hurtful and harmful than sweet. It used to be a lot of sweet. Now these days it's not so much sweet. But by now, you've intertwined yourself so much with this person. Maybe you've had kids. Oh, thank you guys so much. Maybe you've had kids. Maybe you've bought a house. Maybe you've started a business together. Maybe you've gotten married. I mean, things are complicated at this point. And so the idea of breaking everything apart feels like a lot of work. And they've also started, the degree of lack of safety that you feel is so much. Yeah, I know, planning his relapses. I know. Well, he was never, somebody is commenting on that. He was never sober. I know that. I now know that. I didn't know that at the time. If I had known that at the time, it would have been over for me, but he hid that really, really well. I didn't really actually know until the relationship was over that he was never sober, that there was always like multiple people on a line. I didn't know that. But anyway, they do such a good job. Do such a good job of making us feel edgy and scared. And by now, I'll bet you, most of you have seen a threatening side. They have shown their cards that if you make the wrong move, or if you take it in a direction that they feel jeopardizes their safety and security, they're going to get you for it. Mine did that at this point. This was a stage where I revealed that he was very in this for himself. That really, he'd already made a couple statements that this was not a reciprocal relationship and he was not invested in me, that I was very replaceable. So that makes me even more anxious because now I'm scared, not just scared of the relationship, I'm scared how this person's going to harm me if the relationship goes south. So there's where you sit at the second stage. And then if you get to the third stage, and man, did I get there, and it about destroyed me. The third stage of cognitive dissonance is you say, I am not making a decision. What is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Why can't I get out of this? I feel insane. I can't make my mind up. I sit here feeling completely helpless. And see what's going on with this at the same time is a trauma bond. You're very trauma bonded at this point. Oh, hey, so good to see you from Melbourne, Australia. I love that. But you feel very bonded to this person by this stage, and you feel immobilized because at this point of the trauma bond, you've moved into resignation and depression. You basically feel like you're no longer capable of acting on your behalf because this person has taken so much control over your life. So it's awful. And I don't know if you guys have heard this. And I have tried to find the research to support it because you know how I'm very much into what's real and true and what's been done on evidence. But I hear that roughly most of us make 7 efforts to leave. I made 2. The second one did stick, but I did it twice. But I know a lot of people are in and out, that it's a pretty common thing that happens when you're in these types of dynamics is that it's very, very hard to leave. So people are already asking me, and I realize I'm looking down a lot. And the reason is because you guys' comments are at the down of the page. Somebody just said, please look at the camera. And unfortunately, me trying to read what everybody's saying, it's very, very hard to do all of that, but I'm trying. If you notice, I changed the angles today so that you guys can see my face. And I'm also not using my glasses, which I know has a terrible reflection. So I don't have, I've gone with the cheap glasses, not the expensive glasses. Okay, so some of you are saying to me, I'm frozen, I'm stuck, I'm paralyzed. You have described exactly what I'm going through. So what can I do? Well, first of all, I want you to know that First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist is a workbook. It's in TikTok Shop. It's also in YouTube in my shop. It is designed to help you step through the process of identifying the confusing message so you can figure out the truth. I'd highly recommend that book. That's a great place to start. It's also an inexpensive place to start because it's kind of a lower tier. But so some practical steps is here. I'm going to give you some steps that you can do on your own, but I do recommend working with somebody or getting the books called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. So somebody's asking, what is the book? And so let me show it to you. It looks like this. This is what it looks like. First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. So I want to make sure everybody can see it. First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. It's a workbook. It's not reading. You're going through, it's a workbook. So it actually asks you questions to work through it so that you work through the steps to figure out what's true and real about your relationship so that you can figure out what to do next. But here's some things that you can do. I'm going to give you some things that you can actually do. By the way, I haven't stopped to introduce myself to everybody. I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr McAvoy. You can call me Kerry or call me Dr. Kerry. I was a practicing psychologist for over 20 years. These days I'm retired, but I have a Ph.D. in clinical psychology. So that's my work experience. And that's what even made me feel more ashamed is how could a psychologist, which is why I wrote the book Love You More. How could a psychologist get into this relationship that should know better because I had been counseling people for over 20 years. So how did I miss, and I even knew what narcissism was. I knew what narcissistic personality disorder was. I knew I had met a narcissist. We joked about it. He knew he was narcissistic. I knew he was a narcissist, but nobody had ever talked about the devastations that happen inside of a narcissistically abusive relationship. That part I didn't know. If I had known that, I would have ran for the hills, definitely. But I didn't know that because that wasn't something that was talked about it's still probably not well talked about in graduate school, which I know is a huge shock to everybody. So what practical steps can you take? Oh, and I didn't answer the question, can narcissists change? Narcissistic personality disorder is a disorder of the personality. What does that mean? It means the way that they're wired as a person, who they are, essentially. So if I said, what's her personality like? Or what's his personality like? They would say, oh, this person's friendly, they're really warm, they're easygoing, they're hardworking, they're a pretty honest person. They're describing you. That's what they're doing. They're describing you. So when we describe somebody with a narcissistic personality traits, we're describing that person. We say they're conflictual, they're not very honest, you can't really trust them, they really think for themselves, really out for themselves. They make great first impressions, but I don't think I'd trust them as far as I could throw them. And when it comes to the end of the day, they only think of themselves. We're talking about a person. That's who they are. That's traits. And it's actually done neurological studies. Those are hardwired into the brain. So by the time you have to adulthood, a person who is low determination, highly impulsive, not self-reflective, they are not terribly empathic, they're terribly egocentric, that's who they are. That's stable. That's a stable personality. And now we say, can they change? Well, okay, so if you're a person who is super easygoing, how easy would it for you to become more uptight? Or say, let's even use a better example. Say you're a person who's really wants a clean house. That's just like who you are. You need a clean house to be able to work. That's me. I really need my things in place. Now I say to you, I want you to learn to become messy and survive it, but not only survive it, to be that. I want you to be a messy person. I can't do that. I would never relax. It would not feel natural. It wouldn't be normal for me. I would always feel a kind of stressed, like I was working against myself. And that's an easy quality, but we're asking them to have self-reflection. If you don't have self-reflection, how do you get self-reflection? How do you learn to observe yourself when the very act of it is foreign? You don't do it. And on top of it, if you were to do it, you wouldn't like what you'd see and you'd feel very ashamed, so you don't want to do it. So you don't want to do it and you don't know how to do it. And you're going to want them to become self-reflective? Or how about to become super intimate and really share who they are when they feel like everybody is ever not trustworthy and that you're not trustworthy in this dog-eat-dog world? Why would they do that? That just sounds dumb. It's actually it's maybe a better analogy, I think, than just saying clean to messy. I think it's better like this. It's like telling them that the sky is pink and that that the blue that they think is blue is not blue. It's actually pink and they've been seeing it wrong. Try to convince them of that. I don't know how to do it. I don't think it's possible. Now, can they modify? Yeah, I know there's some self-aware narcissists who've done a lot of self-work. Yeah, but if you listen to self-aware narcissists, I'm thinking of Lee Hammock, for example, who's very careful and has done 6+ years of therapy, weekly therapy. He would say, my first instincts is still narcissistic. I just have to then think again and challenge myself to do something different. So it's not like he said, oh, I'm a different person. I don't see it through that grid at all. I'm not like that at all. He actually says, no, I have to like do a second step. I have to say, okay, that's your natural instinct, but that's not how you want to operate. So come up with a better solution again. That's what he does. He's talked a lot about that process, warning you all, don't assume narcissists change. So why do they say that they're changing? Well, I can tell you why. Because if the early part of this live I've shared with you is that they're essentially insecure people who are highly dependent on what they get out of a relationship, which is why we call it supply. I know it's kind of a crude way of putting it, but because they're so shame-based and highly insecure, they need a person, not you. They don't see you, but they need a person that gives them all this like stability and in this presence. And oh, thank you so much, Obi. They want that. So they get into these relationships with somebody to get admiration, to feel important, to feel validated, to feel seen, but they don't give any of that. It's all one-sided. They don't know how to do that. And plus, the you that you are, I'm thinking of Obi right now, who just became a super survivor member. They don't see Obi as that person. They don't see Kate. They don't value what makes Kate scared at night. They don't see that. They don't respect that. They just want a person in their life. And anybody will do. Actually, anybody will do temporarily. So that's the horrible part. There's nothing unique about you. You're not unique to them. So it's terribly painful when you realize that this isn't about you, that this person is super insecure, that they would literally just replace, and almost anybody would satisfy their needs because they just need to be the center. That's what they're looking for, control and to be the center. So that's why they say, please believe me, I've changed. Well, it means they don't have the next supply lined up. That's all that means. It means they don't want to destabilize their life. And having you walk out right now would even shake them up psychologically, make them feel rejected, which they don't like to feel, or make them feel, or they just don't have another person that's better than you lined up. Mine actually was already engaged. He posted pictures showing the ring on the beach before our divorce was final. You want to know somebody who was replaceable? I was replaceable. He made sure that I knew I was replaceable. And they make sure that photo stays up on their profile picture for years so I know that I was replaceable. I was no one to this guy. No one. So please don't take that personal. It's not personal. It's not personal. They never knew you. If they knew you and they really loved you, they wouldn't have done that to you. I want you to know that. If they really knew you and really cared about you, deeply respected you, they would not have done that to you. That just to me is more evidence of your insignificance, that this was never anything important to them. Okay, I said I would tell you some steps. I've realized that we've 12 minutes, about maybe I'm going to go over because I was late. So we have about 15 minutes less. I also want to make sure I want to take some time for your questions. You guys have been so great today. So how to begin to break the cognitive dissonance? You have to see the lie. You have to see the lie. And so much you'll say, so if Lisa, Sunny, and I just had this fantastic conversation on Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse podcast. I don't guys know if you know, I have a podcast. I post podcast episodes on YouTube every week, but it also is audio. So wherever you get your favorite podcast episode, you can listen to it. But she made this powerful statement that I really loved in this week's episode that I thought was fantastic. She said, I say, so tell me about this person. Do they tell the truth? And it goes like, well, sometimes they tell the truth, but sometimes they lie. And then she says, so is an honest person ever lie? Well, no, not really. No. So that I want you to do that. I want you to take a for instance and ask yourself, describe what happened here. And then say, what does the situation tell you about this person and about how this person feels about you? And you're going to find out what it tells you about. If you were to separate who it is in your life and who this person is, if you were to like kind of tease that piece out and just looked at the, for instance, like say if a friend came to you and said, hey, somebody did this to me and I want you to tell me how this person feels about me, the person who did this. And they're like, oh, honey, or sir, or guy, I'm so sorry. That's not love. I mean, actually, that's really like that. They took a dump on you. That was really horrible. And that says to me that you're not a lover. You're not even friends. That's how you treat enemies. This person's an enemy to you. So I want you to take that situation and imagine that kind of scenario and then get that kind of clarity. And I want you to I know it hurts. I want to tell you that hurts because you've invested so much. You've promised so much to this person. But I want you to sit for a moment and let that sink in and grieve. Be angry, grieve about it. And then but I want you to start to let that soak as the truth. Love, remember what I said a little while ago. Fear versus love. Love respects, it's mutual, it's open, it makes you more. You feel safe. Hatred or fear feels binding. You feel suppressed. You feel small. You're disrespected. You're not validated. You can't speak your mind. You can't really show up. You can't take risks. That's the difference. By you watching those differences and realizing which side of that fence you're standing on, then you'll know the truth. The book, First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist, will help you get there. It will do this process. It will kind of step you through these types of questions. But you don't need to have it to get this. You can do it yourself. And this is how to do it. It's by waking up to the truth. Here's a really great example of how mine sent me confusing messages. I got some shocking information about our relationship and his status that we took some legal intervention, and it put our relationship on hold for a little bit of time. And so while we were waiting, we kind of separated because I didn't want to have a relationship that lacked integrity. And so I was so excited that once this legal issue got resolved, that we could resume an intimate relationship and resume kind of moving towards our marriage. And that weekend was supposed to be a celebration. He wanted to go out of town and make it a big deal. I thought it was a great idea to make it a big deal. That night, after that legal issue was resolved, instead of spending it going out to dinner and having a romantic night with me, he went out and disappeared and was gone till 3 a.m. in the morning, claiming he needed to visit his son. No, that's not what happened. That whole weekend setup was so that he could go meet somebody for the weekend and spend a night with this person. He was in a hotel with somebody else. Now, I should have immediately stopped and asked myself, is that what love does? No. There was nothing loving. That was predatory. That was a deep betrayal. Now, I didn't find out about this until it was all over, but the me today, if somebody made a big choice like that, so this is what happened recently. So I did make a good decision recently. I had a guy I was dating in December, kind of started liking him. We had big plans for Christmas, and I got diverticulitis. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but let me tell you, the pain was like on the par with labor. I could barely walk. I was down for a week. It was awful. I ended up in the ER. I was so sick, so sick. And he called me up just before we had this big New Year's Eve party that we're going to go out to and said, I know you're so sick you can't go dancing. You just need to stay in for the night. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, then I really want to go out alone. This is an important night to me, and I don't want to miss my New Year's Eve party. So I said, so what are you looking for from me? Are you wanting me to tell you it's okay and that that I won't go and I'm backing out? He goes, yeah. I want you to let me know that it's okay that you were going to back out and I can go on because this is really important to me. I said, sure. He goes, well, I'm feeling crappy. I don't know why I feel so crappy. I'm thinking in my head, dude, because you're doing a crappy thing to me. But I didn't say anything. I just said, well, good luck. Happy New Year's. I have never spoken to him again. I will never speak to him again, ever. Because what he showed me was that his party was more important than my health and certainly more important than me, that I was a nobody to this man. And he now is a nobody to me. So that's how you break the cognitive dissonance. If you're not for sure who this person is, for instance, step back, ask yourself some really hard questions about what this reveals about this person, and then make some decisions based on that information. Because love, like I said, is patient, respectful, protective. It brings out the best. It encourages openness and honesty. If you feel less than that, you are not in a safe relationship. And this relation, you deserve so much better. So much better. So I have talked a lot about this. I really want to, I'm thrilled that you're here and listening today, because this is stuff that keeps us trapped. I don't want you trapped. I want you out of that relationship. If you're not safe, I understand that. And I understand how powerless and helpless we get at the beginning. If you missed the start, you probably heard me say that I got to the place where I really actually didn't care if I lived. I actually really did. I was actually praying that I wouldn't live. I would want it out so bad, and I couldn't see a way out. So I don't want you to feel that way, guys. This is scary stuff. Being in these types of relationships is really hard. So this is important. The trauma bond part. Next week, we'll talk about a trauma bond. I'll actually go through the 7 stages of it. Today, I've been talking about cognitive dissonance, kind of like backwards. I'd actually prefer to talk about trauma bond first and the cognitive dissonance second, but they really go hand in hand. They're like buddies, you know? They're always together. If you're in a trauma bond, you have cognitive dissonance. You can't have a cognitive dissonance and probably, you can't have some cognitive, no, you probably have some other trauma bond with cognitive dissonance. They probably always go together. Okay, so what are your questions? I'm going to put my glasses on, which I know, I'm sorry for the reflection, but what would you guys like to know today? What questions do you have? I agree with you, Katie. A trauma bond is hell. Absolutely for hell. I'm trying to look back if any guys have questions, because I know I talked a long time. I really love teaching, so thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm so thrilled so many of you on YouTube have been following me. Thank you. If you're not a subscriber, I highly recommend that you subscribe so that you don't know, so you never miss a notification, because I typically post content, 2 big pieces of content that's live, as well as the podcast on Monday. Yes, Mandy's asking, should I meet a lawyer as part of my planning to get out? Yes, I absolutely would. The reason is because you're going to get a lot of misinformation. You're going to get a lot of misinformation. Your partners are going to scare you with telling you that what they think the law is in your state. Probably this person does not know what the law is, because, by the way, the laws are constantly changing. So I'd highly recommend that you get good legal advice before you make a decision, so that you know your rights. For example, one of the ones I've been hearing lately is that somebody moves into your house, and they're not married to you, and they're not on the deed. Essentially, they're leasing, they're like renting from you, and it's very hard to evict them. So find out stuff like that, so that you know what your rights are about getting somebody out of the house, getting somebody off the deeds, what custody challenges you might face, those types of things. Just figure out your rights. Can I talk about going supernova? I have no idea what that is, Infinite Coat. And thank you so much for subscribing, Abby. Today. I see several of you subscribed, and I so appreciate that. Elizabeth did too. And Narcissist Hex, thank you for being here. I'll have to check out your page. I appreciate that. Should you leave if they're in active psychosis? So you're married to a person who, or in a relationship with somebody who has both NPD as well as schizophrenia. Whew, that's brutal. Megan, yeah. Are they getting care? I guess that's my first question. Do they have a good psychiatrist on board? Are they getting psychiatric help? Are they being compliant? Now, it's not your job to make them compliant. No, they're not. But they're actively psychotic in the moment. Man, that's a rough one, Megan. It really depends upon the resources that you have. Oh, and they're actively psychotic right now. Are you safe? That's what I want to know. Are you safe? Because that does not sound safe to me at all. So, oh, you've only been dating. Oh, then get the hell out of there. Yeah, please. If it's new, then leave. He is not your problem. Yeah, he really is. I'm assuming because you're Megan, maybe it is a woman, but that person's issues are not your problem. They had a problem before you met you. They're going to have a problem long after you're not in their life. So please, I definitely would leave. Somebody else asked, what does no contact do to the covert narcissist? Busta, I totally understand why you're asking that. At least I think I understand why you're asking that question, but I'm going to push back on you. I'm going to ask you, why does it matter what it does to them? One of our best pieces of revenge, and it is revenge in a way, is for you to cease to see this person as important and to really care about what they think or feel. When we have an investment in how they experience what we do or don't do, we're still enmeshed with that individual. Yeah, you like, I know that's the right answer. We still are enmeshed. We still then are invested what they think of us. We want to like get separated from that so that we're no longer invested. So mine is, okay, so what does it actually do? It bugs them. You going no contact bugs them, but it really doesn't matter that it bugs them because it really doesn't matter because you're not in their life and you don't want to care about what they care about. So yeah, ideally I would say don't worry about it. But I do understand that, yes, in the beginning when we have that trauma bond and we're trying to break it, that's part of breaking it, is that we have a strong investment about how they feel about what we do and don't do. So I get why you're where you're at. I felt that way too, very much so. How do you know if you're trauma bonded? Laura, will you come back next week and ask me that question again? Because it's going to be all about a trauma bond. And today I don't have the time to do it justice. I need to really wrap this up. So please come back next week because it will be about a trauma bond. I do find no contact terribly helpful, very, very helpful because it gives you peace of mind. You know, then you're not going to most of the time stumble across their stuff. You're not going to suddenly see a text message or an email that pops up. That this gives you a whole, and it really helps your body, because you're traumatized. You may not realize it, but you're in a state of fight or flight, and your body needs to unwind and just to chill. So no contact's about you. It's really not about the other person. It's about you. And it gave me tremendous peace of mind. It really, really did. It's hard to stop caring. So you ask, how do I stop caring? It's hard. It takes you saying, you know what? That's not any of my business. What do I need to be focusing on now in my life right now? What today is today about? I want you to like think about scheduling your life, setting some goals and working on those things. And then every time you catch yourself, don't beat yourself up. Just be aware of it. Be interested that you're struggling with it and then refocus into something new. It takes time. To really detach takes time. I'm really glad it helps, Sugar Ray. They're really helpful. Somebody else asked me about a narcissist. Yes, it's always the same day and time every week. I always go live on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, my time. Do I have public mail? Yes, I do. It's hello at Kerry Ph. Let me say it again. It's at hello at Kerry McAvoy Ph.D. And I also have a website at Kerry McAvoy Ph.D. so that you can find me. I'm really easy to find, very easy to assess. Do I personally know of any good therapists or lawyers in Maryland? Actually, I don't. I wish I did. I wish there's a directory that existed that I could just pass out to you guys. Oh, Nicola, so good to see you. Welcome. I'm thrilled that you're here. We have a lot of new people here today, and I'm really happy that you're here. I unfortunately don't have a directory to everybody who's possible, so I'm really sorry about that. I do think you get a decent representation of good therapists if you go on Psychology Today. Let me say it again, Psychology Today, put in narcissistic abuse or betrayal trauma and see who pops up. I think you can get a pretty decent list of people. Narcissists heck say they may stalk. Absolutely, that's what I wanted to comment. Yes, stalking is very common at narcissists, and that comes with that question of what do they think after I leave, or what do they, what a covert narcissist think? Well, all narcissists hate seeing you do better. They hate seeing you move on with your life, and they hate seeing you discard them psychologically. So when you move on, like Megan is struggling, or Busta is struggling with, when you move on and put them behind you, they sense that, and then they know that they cease to have meaning. And there is nothing more hurtful to a narcissist than not to be meaningful, to be invisible. There's like 3 types of attention. And I'm going to say this is the last thing I say today. 3 types of attention. There is positive attention where I say, hey, I see you, way to go, that's awesome. Or I really appreciate you, or thank you, I see you, I see you. Then there's negative attention, which is I get critical of you and I ream you out and I'm really upset with you. And then there is indifference or invisible, no attention. To a narcissist, for most people, we want positive attention. We can tolerate being invisible. I'm invisible to a lot of people a lot of the time, and I don't really care that I am. I don't see them, they don't see me, whatever. It's no big deal. Negative attention I don't like. I prefer to avoid that. But to a narcissist, this is the order. They want positive attention first, negative attention next. It's close second. They like it. They like seeing you all stirred up. And then being invisible is absolutely the worst. So you want to hurt them and affect them? cease to care. Just become indifferent. They don't matter to you anymore. And then you really psychologically wounded them. All right, you guys, I will be back here next Tuesday. Yeah, gray rocking, exactly. I will be back here next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do have a community membership as well as a club. All the details are on my website. I'm also right now gearing up for Healing Strong, which is a 12-week group coaching program to help you heal. I'm also gearing up a new program that I'll hopefully try to launch next week called New Powerful You. So if you're looking for a way to how to spot and avoid predatory people and bad situations and you just don't know how to do it, then we're going to have a 10-week program that starts in September and October. I'm super excited about both, really excited about both. So you can find out about the first one, Healing Strong. That first group coaching is on my website. All right, I'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for all the gifts and being here. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And I'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye.